Video 1, Instructions and Questions. Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to prepare for your upcoming assignment, which will be an essay answering how Australian society changed as a result of World War II. You will have your choice of topics, which will be presented to you next week, but first we're going to go through what we've already done and introduce a new topic. So far, we have covered the war itself, including the Holocaust, the atomic bomb, Kokoda, and experiences of Australian soldiers. Last lesson, we introduced the topic that we will be covering for the next week, which is the home front and women's roles in the war. We did a brief overview of how the war changed social norms and everyone's need to play a part in the war. We touched upon the fact that women had a significant role to play both at home and overseas. And today, you will be conducting your own research into what life was like for Australian women, both at home and overseas, diving into the specifics, and you'll be answering the question which we have here for you today. So this is the question that you will be addressing in Peel form. World War II provided women with more work opportunities, and I would like you to respond to this statement referencing either the taking up of men's roles on the home front or women's military services. You must include one statistic and compare life for women during World War II to life before World War II. We have discussed the importance of good and reliable research. And as a reminder, I have created a list of the top 3 online databases that are great for finding a wide range of primary and secondary sources. These include the Australian Government's Department of Veterans Affairs, their ANZAC portal. It also includes the National Archives of Australia, as well as the National Film and Sound Archives. You do not have to use these databases, but they are really useful and come highly recommended. However, if you source from elsewhere, that is totally okay, but please make sure that it is a reliable source, and we will go into how to know if it's reliable a bit later on. There are some key questions that need to be considered and answered when approaching this task, which I have popped on a slide for you to keep returning to throughout this process. When researching the topic, in order to understand how World War II changed women's roles, it is really important to first understand what life was like for women before World War II. We have covered women's roles and rights throughout years 7 through 9, and now you're in year 10, so you should have a pretty solid understanding. We've covered this throughout the ancient world, the Industrial Revolution, and also the Making a Nation and World War I units. However, this was a very long time ago, so you will have an opportunity to do a bit of research on this before you get started to refresh your memory. This can be done independently or in small groups. Once you feel confident in your understanding, you then need to ask yourself how World War II changed roles for women. Find specific examples. So if, for example, you're answering how World War II led to more involvement in military services, you'll want to elaborate on that in your evidence and explanation part of your Peel paragraph to explore why women joined the military, what choices they made and why they were forced as well, and also what roles they took on. You may also like to consider what further societal change this led to. You must ask yourself if you have used appropriate research to guide your writing. You want to ask yourself if the evidence or statistics is relevant and also if it's reliable. So knowing if it's relevant, it's really key to go back to your topic sentence and see if this answers the question. And regarding whether it is reliable, ask yourself who wrote it. Who is the individual and who is the publisher? Are they a historian? Are they an academic? It's really important to make sure that your facts are from a reliable source, and these are some of the questions that you need to ask. Lastly, after you've written your response and are in the editing process, and even before you reach this process, you need to make sure that your paragraph is structured and clear. So the main question that you need to ask yourself is, are the elements of the Peel easily identifiable, chronological, and distinguishable? So in other words, are all 4 parts of the paragraph there? Are they included? Are they structured in the right order? Does it answer the question? Is there a clear topic followed by evidence that's supported by an elaboration? You need to constantly ask yourself these questions throughout the process before you even begin and are planning, as you're writing, and afterwards as well when you are in the editing phase of this task. Video 2, student examples. When providing feedback, I used Hattie's feedback model, which emphasizes three major questions, which are where am I going, how am I going, and where to next? So these questions must be answered by the teacher when assessing students' work and process and progress, but they also need to be identifiable for the learner as well. They need to be able to answer these questions themselves, and this feedback comes in three forms, so feed up, feedback, and feed forward. The question of where I am going is known as the feed up phase of this model, and this was provided to all students during the instructional phase of their learning. They were explicitly and directly taught how to approach the task and also why they were undertaking it. They were provided the question, they were taught where to source their information, they were modeled the structure for their writing task, and they were provided thought-provoking questions that will ensure they have researched and written correctly. They were also told that this would be a topic and writing exercise that would help prepare them for their summative essay. Knowing all of this, this is why the task was designed. It was designed in order to help develop both their research and writing skills as a formative task, in order to develop the necessary skills, learn the necessary content, and receive feedback and feed forward, which will help aid their development and allow them to tackle their summative task, understanding all the things that they need to. As for how am I going and where to next, these are the feedback and feed forward parts of the model. So students were provided feedback which informally assessed their ability to research, to answer the question, and to formulate a paragraph response to said question. For feed forward, they were provided guidance on how to improve their work and how to address these areas for improvement in order to achieve their learning goals. For the examples of student feedback, I have used two. The first is a Peel paragraph, which answered how World War II changed women's roles in society. And the second is an extension task, which was completed by a high achieving student who required more formative work than their peers. The Peel paragraph on the left discussed how World War II impacted women joining the workforce, and I provided the student with feedback on what elements worked well, and in this case, it was their topic sentence and their use of a statistic as evidence. I thought that these were both really great. I also identified areas for improvement, including the need to include a reference and providing examples of what kind of work women took on and how World War II led to more roles and rights for women, and finally their need to include a linking sentence in order to complete the paragraph. For their reference, I am confident in its reliability because we went through it together in class and I know that it was from one of the aforementioned databases. However, I do need to follow up on whether the statistic is relevant because when I went back to look at this student's work, I didn't realize at the time, but it's not completely clear whether they're addressing the taking up of men's roles at home or women in the military. I saw workforce and assumed the former, but they could have been referring to the latter or a combination of the two, and I will therefore need to follow this up next class to assess relevancy. Regarding areas for improvement identified, these were elaborated on for feed forward, where suggestions were made on how to improve the work. This consisted on addressing the feedback and adding in the missing elements. It was explicitly stated that to do so would result in more elaboration, which would help their response and benefit their writing moving forward. On the right, we have work completed by a high-achieving student who was tasked to elaborate on their Peel by providing a short response on what life was like for women in their new roles. Once again, I have provided feedback for this student, offering mainly verbal praise for their work in class, but also providing them with a few areas for improvement moving forward. This was just adding a statistic on the pay disparity between men and women and also adding a reference. The purpose of these tasks is essentially to track student learning and understanding, as well as understanding where they're at in terms of skills. They knew from the beginning where they were going, and through written and verbal teacher responses, they now know how they're going and where they need to go in order to achieve their goals. I was able to collect a little bit of data from these works, and the main data was that most students didn't realize that they needed to include a reference in informal in-class tasks. So this is my mistake for not being explicit enough with my instructions, and essentially offers feedback for me as a teacher to know where I have not been explicit enough. And next time I will be sure that that is included in the instructional part of their assessment. Video 3, differentiation and literacy and numeracy. There are two students in my class who require differentiation, one of whom is performing at a really high standard, whose work I analysed in the previous video, and one who is performing at a lower level due to dyslexia, ADHD, and low literacy. I used Tomlinson's differentiation model, which outlines that educators can differentiate at the content, the process, the product, and the learning environment levels, and this is dependent on students' readiness, interest, and learning profile. For student A, I differentiated at the product level by providing an extension task for them to work on after they had completed their original task. This activity was the one analysed in video 2, where after identifying how women's roles changed due to World War II, they were also asked to analyse the hardships that working women faced. This student tends to finish work significantly faster than their peers, and it is therefore crucial to have an extension activity or question, not only to keep them engaged and busy during class, but also to extend their learning. Their learning needs are different, and we need to cater for that. This student has a readiness to learn, an interest in history, and is known for completing these higher order tasks, and therefore I think that this task for them was incredibly justified to help them with their learning. For student B, who has dyslexia, ADHD, and low literacy due to an undisclosed disorder, it was crucial for me to offer them extra support. So I differentiated at the process level by providing them with a short video from the National Library of Australia on women's suffrage, just to provide them with some background information needed to tackle this task. This was viewed at the same time that the peers were also engaging in their own small group or independent learning and research. The video is less than 6 minutes and includes a voiceover, pictures, and only small amounts of writing. And I chose it because, due to limited concentration with ADHD, a short video is a really great way to make sure that they get the learning and the education that they need without overwhelming them, and also the use of pictures and limited writing helps with their dyslexia. When it came to writing, I gave them further scaffolding, and this was mainly in the form of an extra scaffolded Peel template, which included starter sentences for them to build on and just a more in-depth approach to writing Peels. I also sat with this student during class to help prompt thinking and writing as well. This student has a readiness to learn, again, an interest in history. However, due to low self-esteem and self-efficacy, which is really evident in their learning profile, this readiness is severely impacted. They're ready to learn, but when it comes to taking on tasks, their readiness to tackle tasks is low. So the best way to assist this is to offer a helping hand and be a supportive person for them in class. Focusing now on literacy and numeracy. For literacy, students comprehended texts either through listening, reading, or viewing, depending on what research they engaged with and what mediums they engaged with. They then composed their own text through writing their own paragraphs. And through this writing, they developed skills in text knowledge by structuring cohesive paragraphs and subject-specific sentences. For numeracy, students recognized relationships by analyzing the correlation between a global war and an increased demand for workers, and therefore women workers. They interpreted statistical information by incorporating a statistic into their Peel paragraph, and they also used mathematical skills simply by the very nature of writing a Peel paragraph. This is a paragraph that is divided into key sections where students must sort information by topic and sort it chronologically. This is similar to creating a timeline, but they are instead sequencing sentences rather than sequencing events. The teaching of both literacy and numeracy were explicit and scaffolded by me, the teacher. For literacy, students were explicitly told what kind of media to engage with for research purposes, and they were taught how to structure their text. For numeracy, students were provided with questions which encourage mathematical thinking about relationships and cause and effect. They were also provided opportunities to interpret data and were scaffolded a paragraph which used numeracy to divide the text into clear and separate sections.